Prompt engineering is the art of crafting effective prompts for large language models, namely ChatGPT. But prompt engineering can be a challenging and iterative process to figure out what would be the best prompt or prompts to ask our request through that. And you don't want to get stuck in the loop of trial and test process. So now is a wonderful moment to say hi to a new feature developed in Azure ML called Prompt Flow, which can extremely simplify the process of developing prompt, evaluating them, comparing them, and even operationalizing them through this end-to-end process. Potentially can be a code or a visualize-based solution within Azure ML. And guess what? You can also use some pre-existing and pre-developed prompts with other frameworks in your prompt engineering projects. You must check this new feature then. Let's go! Hello everyone, this is MG and welcome to another video. If you have been dealing with prompts and prompt engineering, then we all know some pain points. For example, for the initial moment that we start developing the prompts, there is no baseline and guidelines to help me to understand how can I effectively develop the prompt which is specific for my use case. And then on the top, when I have all these prompts or flow of prompts developed for my project, I need to figure out a way how to evaluate this end-to-end process. Not just with 1, 2, 3 tests, I need to have a sort of a solution that can support me for a bulk test, making sure my solution is consistent in aspect of how it is behaving before I productionize it. And talking about productionization, then I need further support to deploy this end-to-end solution, let's say developing an API that when I call it, it uses OpenAI with all the prompts I have developed in backend to answer that question based on my internal company data, or calling an API for my internal server through how ChatGPT is calling that API. But you can guess based on the complexity of your use case, you are going to develop multiple prompts and flow of solution that is calling multiple services, and one of them is namely your large language model. Then this is the time to really say hi to a great feature recently cooked and added to Azure ML called Prompt Flow, which with using Prompt Flow, it will really simplify and even sort of automate all these stages that we talked about, which means it can support you starting from creating your prompts, using some pre-existing prompts developed by other frameworks, starting evaluating your prompts or evaluating end-to-end the flow of your prompts with even bulk test evaluation. And then lastly, with a click, you can deploy this solution for operational stage and having that as an end-to-end endpoint. You must check this new feature. Then, let's check it out. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will get notified for the next video. Thank you. All right, welcome again everyone to this wonderful new feature added to Azure ML called Prompt Flow that I think it has all you need for making a product, an application out of your prompt engineering use cases. So when we talk about prompt engineering project or making a product or making application by your company using large language models, we are talking about multiple stages in development and multiple requirements, not just from development all the way to production. And the actually recent article that has been published, I call it recent based on the time that I record this video, and I call it a recent feature added in Azure ML. Again, based on the time I'm recording this video, this feature added to Azure ML is in private preview mode. So it's pretty recent and just get cooked. And the time that you're recording and watching this recorded video, maybe it's no longer in private preview. So I am sharing this capability and all these features around based on the time that I'm recording this video. But honestly, I couldn't stop myself to record this video because I was really excited when I saw that this is released. This is gonna really tackle a lot of pain points that you might have faced out potentially in your prompt engineering projects. So let me dive into the capabilities of what is the proposed value of this feature, and then I'll show you some hands-on stuff in action. So when we talk about prompt engineering, let's say you are developing an application, you are a company that you're selling, let's say, shoes or any specific product, and you want to create a chatbot to let your customers ask for a specific product in your company by conversation. Let's say, hey, I want to get a pair of shoes with this specific color, with this specific softness. I want to, let's say, use it for gym, when I'm running, when I'm hiking, with this specific design in my mind, so on and so forth. And then you want to leverage large language models, for example, ChatGPT that is running by GPT 3.5, to get that input from your customer and check out your internal database that you have list of shoes and return one back based on the user input. This is just one simple use case. Or another use case, we already created multiple videos for you that how you can chat with your company data. I want to add the link of those videos on the top right of the screen, that how you can use, let's say, ChatGPT to ask questions about your company data, not the data that ChatGPT knows on internet that has been trained until 2021, right? So these are different type of scenarios that you can leverage large language models, and for regardless of the use case type, you always start with a design. And when we talk about designing prompts is the initial thing that you need to have in place to start asking questions from your large language model. Let's say ChatGPT here. But that's not the and actually that's just the beginning, because when I have the input, which is a initial prompt, I need to do some quick tests, check the results from the model. I'm not satisfied with the prompt as an input that I provided to the model, so I'm going to modify my prompt or prompts, because you might have multiple prompts to based on your application. We're gonna talk about that actually. So it's gonna be even more complex when you're dealing with multiple prompts to call an API to answer questions, summarize something, create a URL, call an API, search for embeddings. These are different prompts that you can create, and you need to evaluate them. Let's say you're lucky with just a couple of iterations, you will ended up seeing that, oh, I have some prompts that I think they're good enough. So you want to go further for a more major test with couple of scenarios. You want to test this prompt, not just one or two, beyond just a trial and test. First of all, good luck with succeeded in the trial and test here. Quite honest, I have been in that stage. That will take ton of time to figure out what would be the best prompt for you if you do not follow best practices, and of course some tools like Prompt Flow which just got released. Second, if you pass this stage and you come to evaluation stage here, you need to build your custom solution to test this flow with the bulk test. So for that product company use case, I have to come up with multiple questions that a user might ask for a specific shoes or a specific products, a specific clothes, and then check out what's going to be a potential answer, and then figure out how my prompts or the flow of prompts are getting the output based on my requirement. Am I satisfied with these several scenarios, not just one or two, or not? Then that's going to be another custom thing you need to build. And lastly, when you're done with all these prompt flow stuff, that can have a Python code that called ChatGPT model or GPT 3.5, calling all different your API, calling different sources of the data that you have. So all these end-to-end solutions need to get deployed as well to create your own endpoint for this end-to-end solution. This is another custom work you need to do. But with the announcement of Prompt Flow added in Azure ML, all these three stages going to be covered for you. How? First of all, it will let you start creating some prompts, not just from scratch, some pre-built prompts developed by other frameworks. Then it will help you have multiple versions of your prompts and compare them, evaluate them to see which one works the best. And then it will let you to do bulk test. With a huge amount of data that you have, you can start testing these prompts, not just with one or two, and see the metrics of your evaluation, similar to how we evaluate a classification model as an example, right? And then lastly, when the solution is done, we are done with evaluation. With just a click, you can deploy your end-to-end solution as an endpoint. Exactly how you deploy a real-time machine learning model, you can have a real-time endpoint for this end-to-end solution. So you give your API to someone else. As soon as they call it, that solution will go check out your database and recommend a shoe based on what your customer asked. So this is fantastic. Now, I want to add this link of article to the Discord channel. Also, again, for enabling that new feature in Azure ML, it is in private preview. So if you want to try it now, you have to submit a form that will let you access to not just this feature, most of other private preview features as well of Azure ML. So I add all these links to the Discord channel. So make sure you click on the Discord channel on the video description. It will navigate you to the channel, and you can check all the different links that is relevant to this video and references I can add there. So now let me jump to my Azure ML. I got access to this feature. I'm going to show you how it works. Alright, here it is, my favorite tool in ML, Azure ML Workspace, and this nice feature added called Prompt Flow. Again, as you can see, as of now I'm recording its preview. So since this is a private preview, based on customers' feedback, some potential changes may be coming into this tool, but as of now I'm sharing this what is available and just got announced in Microsoft Build last week. Okay, so when you click on Prompt Flow, of course, after enabling access and filling out the form that I mentioned, you just click on the Prompt Flow, and there are different tabs here. The first one is the place that you start creating the flow of your prompts, which we're going to talk about that. The second tab is creating connection to your large language models. Let's say you have access to Azure OpenAI, and you have deployed chat GPT 3.5 model, and you need to use it for your solution for, let's say, having a chat computation, or for creating embeddings, as an example, for using a different model. So you need to create a connection to those models. How? If I click on connection, I just click on create. There you go. You can connect a model that you have in non-Azure OpenAI, the one that is publicly available. You can go just openai.com, log in, and get your API there. Or the one that you create in Azure OpenAI. And of course, with your prompt engineering project, you might need to connect these models to, let's say, internet. We created another video how you can connect ChatGPT to internet using Bing search, right? So you can create a connection to your Bing API here to later use it in your project. Or you can connect it to the SERP, and I think you can use SERP for leveraging different search engines, let's say Google, for having that connected to your large language models. Now, I already created a connection to my Azure OpenAI because I wanted to use my large language models deployed in Azure OpenAI. So I gave it a name. You need to paste your API key, base, type, and version. You can grab them from your Azure OpenAI. I just had them all. I copy and paste them here, and now I have my connections here. I call it TestMG. Now, runtime. Of course, for running all these prompt flow engineering, running your Python code, your custom Python code that will call OpenAI, do any sort of transformation needed within your prompt engineering project, you need to have a server running, right? This is the place that you can create the server. So you can create two types of runtimes. You can create a runtime from a complete instance that you created in Azure ML. So if I click on it, here I give it a name, MG001. And here are a list of complete instances that I have created in Azure ML before here. And the one that is running is the first one. So when I clicked on it, it needs to install some packages and libraries to let my prompt flow and prompt engineering stuff works. Let's say some OpenAI packages, LangChain or kernel search, whatever. So you can use the default environment that has some predefined runtime with all those packages needed for prompt flow, which I would recommend go for that, or create your custom one. That's it. You click on create, your runtime will be created here. Later on, when we want to deploy our prompt engineering project as an endpoint, then later on I can have a manage online endpoint runtime created as well. I call it again another name, MGB002. Then the same thing, the environment we talked about, select your compute, and you click on next review to create it. I don't do it because I already did one, so I have a online and runtime as well for deploying the solution that I'm going to show you shortly. So that's about these three tabs. We talked about the second, third one, but now let's go to the main one, which is the flow and place that you create your prompt flow. Think about this. With this service, you can create your own company copilot. Create a large language-based application that can do any task based on your development and design. You can have think about like this. You can have something like ChatGPT to answer questions based on your company data, to actually generate your code, to actually generate any type of content that these large language models support based on your customized data set, your own company requirement, and your own company enterprise data. And of course, you can go beyond just your company data. You can connect to external APIs. You can connect to Bing search engines, Lots of art of capabilities or possibilities here. So going to the flow, let's say I want to create my first prompt flow. I click on create. There are a couple of things you can do here. You can start creating a flow by type. Here's the first type, generic flow. That's the time that you're gonna develop a generic prompt engineering and prompt flow. You want to have your full flexibility. You can just start with this one. Nice to start for a generic flow, and you can see the description here. But if you have a use case that it is towards like a chatbot application, for example, the use case I mentioned, that a user come and provide some descriptions about a specific shoes that they're gonna buy, and your chatbot that is empowered by a large language model will give them some company product suggestion. To me, that's like a chat flow. So I would start with this one. And remember that a very important step for us is evaluating these prompts and prompt engineerings. So if you don't want to start from scratch, click on evaluation flow. This will give you some nice baseline to start evaluating all these prompts and prompt flows to make sure the way you're prompting these large language models is reliable enough to go to the next iteration or even production. But here you can also create from gallery if you don't want to start from this baseline to develop yours. And I want to use two of these examples to show you how prompt flow works. For example, if you want to start with chatting with a specific source of data, use this one. This one has chat with Wikipedia, so you can start modifying that. Or bring your own data. Remember, we created a video that how you can chat with your own company data. Here is an example of that in the gallery. Click on it, start modifying that and run it to see how it works. Or if you have a vector database that you have your embedded text added in a vector database, you can start query those information, start a Q&A with your vector database here. So I actually created two, one with bring your own data and one with chat with Wikipedia. So I want to show you quickly, but before I click on that, there's another type of object you can create here from gallery, which is evaluation. Now let's say I'm done with my prompt flow. I want to see how I can evaluate the prompts. It is not actually an easy task, because let's think about it. If you have a classification model that's going to predict tomorrow going to be raining or not, then the evaluation of that model is simple. How many times my model truly said that tomorrow going to get rain and it was actually raining on that date? Then we can then start, let's say, measuring accuracy of that model. You can do the same thing for some of your prompt flow projects. Let's say if you're using ChatGPT to classify a given text, then you can start using this template. That's how you can evaluate the accuracy of your classification by your large language model. But sometimes the output of your language model is not just a classification value, it's a text, like how ChatGPT talks to you, right? Then how you can evaluate the performance of a model like ChatGPT application that can retrieve you back a text. So on backend, how Azure ML team developed this evaluation for those even chat-based scenarios is on backend is using another model like ChatGPT as an example. It's a large language model like GPT 3.5 or GPT. I think it's using actually GPT 4 to check how was your large language model performance or output based on the given prompt, and what was the desired or ground truth sort of chat or output. Then it will start measure the similarity of what you expected and what the model actually gave you as an output. It is scored from 1 to 5. So you can see that it is using large language model by itself to evaluate your solution that is using another large language model. I know it's sort of a nested solution, but this is how it works, and I think it's a brilliant idea. So this one I mentioned that classification is simple, but if we talk about, let's say, similarity evaluation, compute the similarity of the answer base, this is your ground truth, and compare it with what your large language model, let's say GPT-4, actually answered based on your question. That means you have to have your ground truth data to evaluate your prompt. So going back to the flow, I actually ran one of these evaluations I'm going to show you shortly. Also for flow, I started with bring your own data. If I click on this one, it is telling me that it will start getting the answer question from the user, search your vector database, figure out what is the relevant source of data for the user question, bring it to the prompt, and then answer the question. This is the flow. Okay, so I can now create my own vector index to start chatting with my own data, but if you just click on clone, it will start with the example of a public data set that will start asking questions from that vector data or index data and answer the question. So if I click on clone, or if you click on clone, you'll see that chat with your data will be appeared here. So if I click on it, there you go. This is the nice playground of Prompt Flow. I know there are too many things inside, but let me simplify the process for you. Now, the first thing that you're gonna ask from the model, or the first thing that you provide as an input, is here. So if I click on input, the input is simply a question, right? How to use SDK v2 of Azure ML? This is an example of a question. Now, this question should we should create the embedding out of these questions to go ahead all the way to the vector and check what is the similar source of data based on the question. Or longer story short, I want to see what source of data that I have is the closest one to this question to bring the answer for it. That's why I have my input here first, and second, if I click on it, I'm going to actually embed this question. How? This is the time we need a large language model, and that's why the type here, there is an icon that shows this is a large language model based task. How it got created, if you click on LLM, there you go, use OpenAI large language model. If I click on it, you just saw that it created another, I don't want one for me. This is how this one got created, so I'm gonna delete this one to not make this stuff messy. Yes, delete this step. There you go. I don't want this one. Okay. Now, moving all the way back to the top, we talked about the first step. Now, second is creating embeddings. How? Remember I told you need to create a connection to your OpenAI models. I created one, I showed you how, and I called it testmg. That's why I needed that. So it knows that where is my Azure OpenAI service, API, token and stuff, so it can connect to that. And I tested that to make sure it's working. I clicked on run, and it was able to create the embedding out of my input, which is the user question. What is the next step here? Now I need to search question from index documents. Now I have embeddings of the user question. I should go to the source of data, which is indexed, to bring the relevant data back to the prompt and start answering the question. So how this step got created, it is not LLM, you're right. It is actually sort of a vector index. So that's why if I click on more tools, you see there's something called vector index lookup. If I click on it, there you go, something similar got happen. If you don't know what it is, just stay here. Search text or vector-based query from Azure ML vector index. Or you can use Azure Translator to translate a given text here. Or you can use phase index. I think this is developed by Facebook. That's another similarity search method, right? You can have that as another step here. Or content safety, vector database lookup, search for your vector database or existing vector database to answer that question. These are different all type of steps. Or just create a vanilla Python code. So click on Python and have a Python step here, which we have it actually. I'm going to show you. So let me delete this extra one. Going all the way back. Now we had embedding created. Now we have sorry, let me click on this one. Now we have search question from index docs, and then the output of that will go to a Python code. This got generated by this step, and let's see what this one does. You can see this one actually grabbed the search results. How? The search results are actually coming from the output of the previous step. So we got the source data, index data coming in as an output, as an input to this one. That's why I have specified it here. So it will grab it, and all what this code does, it is just simply create what I need to add in my prompt to ask ChatGPT later. What? This is the question asked, and this is the source of data. I grabbed it from the vectors and index data. Now I'm gonna use these as an input for the next part, which is the prompt part that I'm gonna ask my large language model. So what is the prompt? Here the prompt is, now the prompt here is, you are an AI assistant that helps user answer the question. and you should give a context, blah blah blah, and this is the source, and there you go. This is the context and this is the question. But where these are coming from, look at that. My context is coming from this Python code that I grabbed, and question is actually coming from the input. There you go. So you can see even from this nice visualized part, two inputs coming into this prompt variant, the question that I have and the source data that I got from this index vector here. There you go, these two are coming to this. And it calls prompt variants. That means I can, if I'm not happy with this prompt, I can start actually generating more variants of the prompt. I can see I just have one variant of that prompt, but I can create my second one here first, starting from 0, or the second one as well. Then I can evaluate the performance all these prompts for the same task to see which one gonna be the best one for me. So far, just let's go with this default one. And then lastly, I'm ready to ask my large language model here, let's say GPT 3.5, which is the one that ChatGPT use to answer the question based on user question, right? There you go. I just get the output, which is my prompt here, the output of the previous step, as an input to call my OpenAI, and then I generate the output back, which is the customer or the user question. Before I actually run this, let me go to show you another example. Chat with Wikipedia. Again, I created with just clicking on chat with Wikipedia. If I open this one to just understand prompt flow a little bit better, let me see if I have this one. Actually, I fixed the other one. This one I think it worked properly. There you go. Okay, so here what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start asking question and get the answer from live Wikipedia information, even the information available in Wikipedia after 2021, which is the time that ChatGPT, for example, got trained, right? So live data happening right now in Wikipedia, I want to get the answer from there with the source URL. So what I'm gonna do now, this time I'm gonna be a little bit faster, because you know how to create these steps. These are got created by here. This is gonna generate a Python code. This is gonna generate the prompt. This is gonna call an OpenAI model or large language model, and different type of tools are available here. So here the input is again a question. What did OpenAI announce on March 2023? Again, this is not something that ChatGPT, for example, will know by itself. So we're gonna connect it to Wikipedia and get the answer from there. How? This is actually how we're gonna do it. Let's check out the first step. I click on here. This is the initial prompt that you are an AI assistant, you want to do this and that. Here's a couple of examples. A user might ask something, and here's the output. User gonna ask something, here's the output. So I'm showing some examples how you're gonna chat with Wikipedia data. Okay. Now, then having that in place, this is sort of a chatbot based scenario. You can see that we are giving the history of all the chat to this large language model, and then the last question and answer, and here is the last question of the human or the user. Now the next is the answer of the last question. This is exactly how chatbots actually work. Okay, but we are not there yet. Of course, for answering the user question, we need to connect to Wikipedia, sort of grab the relevant information, generate the URL and talk about the source of data that answer the question of the user. That's why we have multiple Python or custom Python steps here. Not going through all the details, here is an example, but just simply it is getting the wiki URL using this code, and then search the results based on the generated URL here, and then process the search result in a way that is ready for actually answering the user question with another prompt. Here what I'm gonna do, so actually before I go further, you'll see that why we are having two different prompts that call large language model. Well, for the first one, we are trying to understand the intention of the what is the context of a user question, and based on that, which is an output of an OpenAI model, we will generate the URL and search results from Wikipedia. And then what gonna be the last large language model connection do? This is the one actually answering the question. It get the context and the URL and the user chat history, and then this will give us the answer. Now you can test each of these steps manually, one by one, run them. I did it successfully. Or here you can do a bulk test. I mentioned that you need to have your ground label data, or just click on chat to test it on fly. So let me click on it. You can see that this was the default question: what did OpenAI announce? It answered that me properly. And then the second example I ran it, what's the difference between this model and previous ones? It got the answer plus the source. Now I'm happy with this chat with Wikipedia. That can be chat with your company Wikipedia, chat with your internal website. Use these templates and check out the chatbot here. Now you want to make this deployed. You want to make this chatbot as an API or an endpoint that you can use it somewhere else, not just testing here in Azure ML. Then just simply click on deploy. That's it. It is as simple as deploying a machine learning model. Similar to that, you give it a name, you define your compute, click on next, next, next. With just a couple of clicks, you can deploy this end-to-end solution. I did it already. If I go to my endpoints, you will see that the latest one I created here, it says that it is healthy, and I can even test it on fly. And it will give me some also examples that how can I consume this endpoint that is a prompt flow project, not just a simple machine learning project. So there are much more stuff. Quite honest, I think I'm recording this just a tutorial for almost 30 minutes, and this is something new. I'm personally also experimenting it, and it has more stuff coming in. Some of them I didn't got even access to that. For example, you can do monitoring of your prompt engineering projects. Let's say now my prompts, everything I validated today works properly, but there's no guarantee that tomorrow or a week after your prompts and stuff gonna be performing as you expect. So there's a monitoring service that will start monitoring the performance of your prompt flow that uses large language models to tell you that, hey, this is the time to revise your prompts or revise your solution, right? So apply for this private preview feature. If you're watching the video in a time that is no longer in preview, then give it a try, test it out. For each specific use case I mentioned, there are a variety of different type of use cases. We can check further or create a generic one. We didn't have a chance to deep dive further on the bulk test stuff, the monitoring stuff, but I don't think we can fit them all to one video, and I don't want to make it overwhelming. I think it's already has a lot of information that you can digest. So this was sort of an introduction to this art of possibility. I know I quickly jumped through different components without much more deep dive details, but please make sure you write down in the comment section what else you're interested to know about this capability. So I'm gonna make sure I'll support you with generating more specific content underneath of this prompt flow feature that got added. And stay tuned, more features, more capabilities coming in, and as soon as they're up there and I personally got access as a regular user, I will make sure I post them online so you can give it a try and check that out. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's all. How do you start from nothing? Number one, make friends that they are hungry and smart like you. These friends will rise over years. And don't forget, loyalty is power and power is loyalty. Number two, now choose friends that they are more powerful than you, and serve them. If you help people, they will help you back. Number three, focus on your very initial small success, which means you have more resources to develop and create bigger success over and over again. And lastly, when you make decisions, use both. Your brain for reason and your soul for intuition. Dream big, my friends, believe in yourself and take action. Till next video, take care.